Welcome to Shawnee Grows. Tonight's topic is garden planning checklist. We have dreaming, planning, go time. This is going to be a brainstorming session. How do we start planning for our growing season? There isn't a right or wrong way. I just want people to garden, right? Let's see who's in the chat. We had greetings from Venezuela, mangoes, guavas, and tamarines from Amaponian. We have Mushroom Mark. How's it going? How's your weather? Food, Forest, Permaculture says, good evening, fellow Earthlings. Thank you for joining us tonight. Storms, Radios, and Cats says, good evening to all you crazy YouTubers. And Miss Sharon, hello. How are you doing tonight? And all, what's your weather? Chef Tech 86 found the right stream. California Ford 44, greetings from Southern California. Good to see you. We're going to start talking about how do we start even thinking about how we're going to garden. And this can be good for people that have been doing it year over year over year, and it can be good for people that have never started a garden before. So what I want to speak about first is kind of turn inwards and ask yourself, why do you want to garden? Just think about that for a minute. Is your purpose to grow a market garden because you want to grow to sell? You're going to have to think about efficient resources, use of your time. Planning is very important in market gardening. Where are you going to sell it at? How are you going to price it? What are going to be your hygiene procedures? Maybe you need to grow a market garden size just because you have that big of a family that you want to take care of. Are you looking for more of a permaculture garden? It's slower in the first year to produce food unless you incorporate it more into a grocery row garden like David the Good. But in the long game, permaculture, food forests take care of themselves and produce food as perennials every year without the gardener. Do you want to just grow food for yourself? Nutrition for the mind, the body? Do you just love being outside? Enjoy gardening as a whole? Why do you want to garden? Oh, we have more people here. Hello, Scott. We're talking about planting a garden. Hello. Oh, GT Junior grows at Alaska, 30 degrees. It was 39 yesterday, but today it's 0. And then with the wind, -7 Fahrenheit. Driving but listening, drive safe. Let's see. Chef Tech says my food tastes better and it's mine. Yeah, why do you grow a garden? Because it tastes better and it's yours, right? Anne's Place made it. Morning. To have no chemicals. That is why you want to garden. That's right. Yeah, sometimes we just have to rethink what is our reason, our mission statement, right? We have this beautiful time now where we gather inspiration. Yes, you have seed catalogs coming in the mail. This is one from Johnny's Seeds. This is one from Baker Creek. They're very fun to look at. This is one from Berlin Seed. Berlin Seed has more than just seeds in their catalog. They have fertilizers, they have perennials, berries and roots. They have books, they have toys for gardening for kids. They have a camping section, a brew section. They have a kitchen preserving section of tools to preserve the harvest. It's kind of a full catalog. That was Berlin Seed. We have pictures from our last growing season that we get to look at and flip through. There's books, right? Books like Grocery Row Gardening from David the Good. It's a permaculture gardening system. Grow or Die is a good read. It talks about survival crops from David the Good. Minimalist gardening. Gardening doesn't have to be expensive or have many things. There's videos on YouTube. That's where you are right now, right? Are you gathering inspiration from videos on YouTube? California Ford 44 says, I love being outdoors, and when I go for a walk, some people have veggies garden, and some have a flower garden. The robot is Chef Tech. Gurneys is your go-to. Yeah, share your seed catalog and gardening material in the chat. Okay, Storms, Raiders, and Cats. No, not the seed catalogs. I can't afford to buy all the seeds in those books of goodness. Plus, GT Jr. is driving and we don't want him to be distracted. If you want to check out our seed haul, we have 2 different live streams. In the past, we did one about fruits and vegetables, and then we did a second one that was just cut flowers. Check those out when you have time. Everybody's saying hi to each other. So I'm going to keep going here. We're on the planning section, right? How do we start planning and thinking? What are the questions we need to ask ourselves about gardening? Well, we need to know where we're going to put it, right? Where are we going to put our garden? Well, I encourage you to start small. Really, actually, start small. You need to figure out where in your property or the land that you're growing on, where are the 8 hours of sun? That is your prime real estate. Warm crops love 8 hours of sun. Where is there 6 hours of sun? Where is there 4 hours of sun and shade? Where is north, east, south, and west? So what you want to do is mark out where are the low spots. That's going to be colder, it's going to be wetter. Where is there a tree causing shade? Maybe it's a tree that you don't want to grow near, like a black walnut tree. Where does the wind come in on the property? Where should you put a windbreak? Maybe you need a hedgerow. Where is the house? Where do you enter in and out of the property? It's actually ideal on a new place to not garden that first year. The entire year, don't put anything in the ground. Now you can still garden, and we can talk about that as we go. There's tricks to that. But you need to watch the land in all the seasons. In the snow, in the rain. You need to understand where the water flows on the property. You could put your garden in the place where all the water moves in and out. Whoops. If you have full sun only in your space, you can use tall crops to make shaded areas for the cool crops. You should place your garden near a water source. Now, that doesn't mean next to your creek necessarily. You know, if that thing overflows, is it going to take out your garden? I just mean, what is your plan for how you're going to water your garden? Or are you going to plant the garden? There's a term for it. It's a trendy thing. I can't remember now, but it's like set it and forget it. Don't water it. Don't do nothing. You just set it up. Maybe you're going to use a bucket and you're going to catch rainwater. You should have a watering can or a cup. A hose and a wand is even better. If you want to look at what other tools would help you for gardening, whether it's small or large scale, check out my live stream titled Top 12 Garden Tools for a list of ideas for you. Someone said hashtag seeds, eyeballs. Food Forest Permaculture has a wonderful idea. It says start a seed exchange where you live. Yes, we had a live stream about like growing your best garden, and we did speak a lot about turning inward to your community. How are you going to encourage your neighbor to grow? What can we do to support each other? Scott says, I've been purchasing seeds from Seed Saver Exchange, so right seeds and seed savers. Anne's talking about how it's 6 a.m. where she's at in Turkey. Chef Tech says, I have many seeds I bought last year that are on my grow list this season. Last year was a San Marzano bonanza year. Scott talks about, I focus on heritage seeds. Yeah, we're going to deep dive into how do you pick out your seeds as we go here. Serena made it in. Hello, Serena. Good to see you. So we were talking about celery with Serena. 10 weeks before last frost is when you put your celery in some dirt in your house. Full sun to part shade would be growing it outside, keeping soil moist. It loves water. And if you'd like to measure equal parts of NPK, so an example of that is 444 for fertilizer, either granular or liquid. And then she's talking about square foot spacing, 4 per square foot. Fresh celery is the best. Yes, celery. Anne's Place says, I have the best plan to water my garden. My grown son with a hose pipe in his hand. Works well. Love it. You can hire it out. It's a team effort. Growing a garden should not be one hand. So let's think about how you will grow. And this can be a mix of everything we're going to talk about here. You have your beds, whether that's in ground or just mounded or raised. You have containers. You have those things called grow bags. They're kind of I want to call them trendy. They've been around forever, but now people actually design grow bags with handles and materials, and they're great. But if you're concerned about material and what they're made out of and what it's in your food or leaching in the soil or breaking down, I encourage you to seek out wool bags, hemp bags, burlap bags versus plastic. It doesn't matter, but if you want to be considerate of those types of things, Etsy could be a good place for you to gather those kinds of things. Maybe there's a local shop. I mean, Diva in the Dirt talks about coffee sacks, right? You could make those a bag and grow inside of those. Now I have plastic because there was someone who planted a bunch of trees and I saved all the containers. The trees came in and they are hard, sturdy, good. They haven't cracked. I've used buckets, 5-gallon buckets, and drilled holes in the bottom. Like 3 holes that size. Was that 2 inches? I don't know. I don't do tools and things. Containers are excellent for that first year on that property that we spoke about because you can move them. You can literally chase the sun around, right? It helps you kind of map it out as you go through the season. Like, well, I can't put that there. It looks like it's washing out. I'm going to move my bucket. I have a green stock. That's a garden tower, growing tower system. They have different styles. Green stock is the company. It's harder to move. They do make ones with wheel carts that you can put on them. Otherwise, you just take them apart one level at a time to move it. So you can still grow food that first year as you're watching the property. So let's look at some garden layouts for bed styles and names and what that could look like for you. So this is an example of an in-ground bed. It's rows, right? So when I was a little girl, you would see single rows. And nowadays, when I say row, like what I want to do is market garden style, 30-inch rows, 18-inch pathways. You have raised beds. They can be built out of stone. I had stone beds for my strawberries. You can have wood. You can have metal. Those metal beds are super popular now. Yeah, many companies make them. And then there's something called hugel beds. So here's a diagram explaining. The first one is for 1 month. That's what you do. That's how you set it up. That's what it looks like. and then after year 1, what the growth will look like. Garden bed after 2 years, and then garden bed after 20 years. So see the difference here is all of the layers. Now there's instructions on how to do hugel beds. Your concept is logs and wood, cardboard, layers of compost, mixing together and breaking down. There's also this is another example of a permanent bed, and this is what I see when I say like market gardening style. And then there's also something called square foot gardening. So what happens is you map out a grid, either physically or visually, and in the square foot, there's a specific amount of plants, depending on what it is, that can fit in that square foot. It really helps you maximize your space and get as much out of it as possible. So let's say you don't have anything started and you want to start a new bed. This is an example from Charles Dowding. He is a no-dig gardener, just like Jesse Frost is. And I can play a little bit of it, but without the sound. What he's doing here is he's laying cardboard down right on top of the grass and the weeds. And so, oh, it skipped to something else. That didn't load right. So I have the link in the description. What he does is he puts down the cardboard for the actual bed section and in the pathway. So that's all covered with cardboard. And then he takes a frame, he used wood, and put the frame in the bed section. And then he broke down compost. He said it was a mushroom compost, and he started filling it with that. And then usually he does like a wood chip path on top of that cardboard. And then now he's just built a space to plant in. That's one example. Scott says, putting this live in my watch later, I know I'll want to hear this again. Thank you. Storms, Radios and Cat says, ugh, meh. I don't follow trends. Too trendy for me. Serena Norell says, I have a green stalk and it is on the patio so my roommate who is in a wheelchair can access it. What should I avoid growing in it because vining plants like squash and watermelon? So when you buy a green stalk, it comes with a book and a manual, and it says in there what your specific green stalk can grow. Because there's a green stalk with a certain inch, like I think it's 5-inch cups, and there's ones with 7-inch cups. So you're correct. You shouldn't be putting vining things in there because they're not going to have enough soil in that cup for the root structure to grow and be healthy. And if you have a wheelchair driving around it, we don't want to run the vines over. So anything that's a bush, right? Some roots can go in those green stalks. The Greenstock website has guides on what plants to put in those if you've lost your book. Anne's Place says, my biggest problem is having too many varieties of seeds and not enough space to plant it all each year. I have to sit and choose when I'd rather plant it all. Yes, seeds carry over each year. Most of them will stay viable and will germinate, and I think you are not alone in that issue. So Mushroom Mark says that in the 5-gallon buckets we used to grow in, he drilled the 1-inch, inch holes. 1 inch, I'm guessing, is what he's saying. So he's the one that drilled the holes. So there you go. And was it 3 or 4 or 5? Do you remember how many holes are in it? You just want drainage. Miss Sharon says this year will be raised beds and planters, 5-gallon buckets sitting beside for each for rain catchment. I love that idea. I like having the water close to where it needs to be, right? Raised beds and planters are a wonderful way to grow. Now, there are people that talk about containers being restrictive, and it is. It's not the same as in the ground. Serena says, I'm going to have to cut off the growth on my lion's mane and start over, getting a gray spot. Moved away from window and was spraying it with water, but I stopped, not sure if too much water. You'll have to go, if it's from North Spore, you'll have to go on their website and read through their facts, and you can personally discuss with them what's going on with your lion's mane, if you need to start over by throwing it out, or if they have an idea of what to do with it. I don't have advice for that. Miss Sharon says, if no rain, I will fill the buckets and let them sit in the sun for at least 24 hours before using. You must be using municipal water, city water. 3. Mushroom Mark drilled 3 1-inch holes in the bottom of 5-gallon buckets. Then he says, did 3 buckets with 5 holes, and it was too much drainage. They were drying out. That is a thing with containers. They do dry out much quicker. Same with raised beds. Raised beds will warm up faster when you're going from that, when's your last frost time. So will a stone bed or anything up against a stone wall, like your house foundation, those warm up quicker. They also will drain well, so that can be good and bad, right? In your land, you need to think about what wildlife is in the area. Are there deer? Are there rodents? What kind of birds come there? What insects are you seeing? Are there feral cats, right? Does the neighbor's cows get out? Like, what's going on with the wildlife? Is there netting or fencing that is going to need to be implemented to save your crop? Miss Sharon says, yes, city water, and I hate it. I have city water here. My garden, which is away, not where I live, I call it my offsite garden, is well water. Enjoy being welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody here. Thanks for joining us for our brainstorming session on how to plan your garden. Questions we can ask ourselves and answer, ideas. I don't think there's a right or wrong way. I just want people to grow food, right? So for soil, it's kind of an entire category, right? Uh, I'm going to put a picture of a potting soil blend up while I talk about this, but not everybody needs to know about potting soil, so take it or leave it here. When we are in a new space, sometimes it's advised to have a testing kit done. You can buy a testing kit at a seed co-op. You can Google local extension office near me and find their website and look on there for testing kits. There are companies that sell testing kits that they mail to you. You put, the instructions will tell you it's usually dig so many inches down, take a sample from here, here, and here, mix it together, do this and that, put it in a tube, send it back to us. If you really need to know that kind of information, but honestly, just understanding what type you have is a good base, and then amending it with homemade kitchen scrap compost, worm castings. Sometimes putting potting soil makes it fluffy, and sand can make it fluffy if you need it to not be compact. So if you're growing in containers, usually you're using an organic potting soil mix. If you're in raised beds, they do sell bags of soil that's marked raised bed soil. I don't think starting a garden needs to be that expensive though. There is mushroom compost, which I don't have any information about. It was something I just heard about from Charles Dowding. Leaf mold, animal manure. So rabbit, goat, sheep are all manure that is cold. It can go in the garden without it sitting and decomposing. There's other animal manures that are very risky as far as they could burn the crops. And what did that animal eat? It's a whole nother conversation about the chemicals that is sprayed on food that animals eat that isn't digested out, and it's still in their manure, and it can contaminate your garden, which I'm not going to get into tonight, but just be aware. I kind of advise people to stay away from animal manure unless you actually have a good conversation with that farmer and where that food is coming from, the hay. So there's also something called biochar, bone meal, burying bones in the earth, pathway soil banks. Those are all really important things when you're talking about feeding your soil. So for a potting soil mix, an example would be peat moss or cocoa coir, compost, perlite or vermiculite, a fertilizer mix, organic all-purpose, or a starter mix, 333 for example. Down to Earth makes one, Dr. Earth, Espoma. The thing people do when they're making their own potting soils is they usually lay out a tarp or they put it in a wheelbarrow. They measure out the things. There's recipes online. This website I'm showing has recipes. Link is in the description. They mix it all together and then they put it in their container. But we actually need to have a bigger conversation about the soil food web. So some of you have probably heard about this. It's very important to learn about, if you ask me. So what happens is we put our plants in the ground, our roots and our shoots. We have organic matter coming in and out. So when the water falls from the rain, when you chop and drop plants, maybe you're putting wood chips down. There's metabolites from plants and animals and microbes creating the beginning of the web. The first level is photosynthesizers, and then the next chain after you talk about the plant level and the organic matter is bacteria, fungi, mycorrhizal, nematodes or root feeders. So that second trophic level is decomposers, pathogens, parasites, and root feeders. Then you go into the protozoa, the nematodes, the erythropods, the shredders, the fungal and bacteria feeders, the amoebae. That's called the third trophic level, shredders, predators, and grazers. Everybody needs to eat. This is the point of this conversation in the soil is all these things need something to eat because what they eat and what they poop out is what our plants eat. That's their nutrition. It's a cycle and it's a web. So after that, we have erythropods, nematodes, the birds, the animals. Fourth level is higher level predators. Fifth and higher trophic levels are the higher level predators. They all are important in feeding the soil, that organic matter, that chopping and dropping. It's good to learn about the soil because the soil is what feeds the plants. Storms, Radios, and Cats is talking about wildlife. Don't get me started on wildlife. I do live in the middle of a forest, kind of. Serena says, I'm going to have to move my asparagus from my 20-gallon totes to the ground. It's been 3 years since I started them. When should I transfer them? It's going to be freezing for 90 hours. I plant asparagus in April. Scott says, my soil is mostly red clay. It's important to understand the type of soil you have and then go from there as far as what do you need to do to amend it. There's research and books and find a local gardener to say, okay, well, how do I grow in red clay? How do I build soil? Chef Tech 86 says I covered all my beds with 2 inches of mushroom compost. It was hot in the fall of 2022. 23 grow season was okay, but 2024 season was awesome. Okay, so you have experience with mushroom compost. Miss Sharon says I have rabbits for fertilizer or compost. The hot compost will hurt your garden. You have to let that break down. Yeah, that's why a lot of people put it in a pile to break down. And so all the bad bacteria get ate up. There's a whole life cycle that happens in there. And then they put it on in the fall and it rests. And then you can plant in the spring. Scott says, I have an area for a good sized food forest. I will need to amend and add organic material. Yes. And a lot of people talk about rabbit. Rabbit manure is ideal. Enjoy Being says red clay has lots of minerals and can hold moisture well as a reservoir. Back to Eden technique. On top of a layer of wood chips and sand, daikon style radish for breaking the clay. Scott says thank you. Serena says, so seed starting mix is a 2-to-1 ratio of peat moss or cocoa coir to vermiculite or perlite, according to Gardner Scott. Anyone make it different from this? I would use all of the things I listed to make. Okay, so seed starting mix is different than potting soil. Seed starting mix does not have any food in it. It's just light and fluffy, so the seed has air and moisture to sprout and germinate. And once it has its cotyledon leaves and then its true leaves, it needs food. So I don't advise using seed starting mix. I advise using a potting soil with feed in it, with food in it, with fertilizer in it, so that seed, once it has growth, has something to eat. I do not promote buying seed starting mixes. It's a soilless medium with just those things, so it's light and fluffy for it. It is not nutritious for them to be in that. I don't want to be up potting all the time. Enjoy being, they say that gypsum can break clay, and it does, but it's a very slow process. It's 7 p.m. where Food Forest Permaculture is. Serena says it's 9:29 here. The rabbit poop is cold, no need for waiting to break it down. That's right. Enjoy Being says, good to be here, Howie, 4:30 p.m. So a good time of day. So often miss out on the other side of the world. Chef Tech 86 says my seeds always do better when I direct sow. It's great data to know that you have success when you direct sow. Other things on your land to look at and keep in mind is it sloped? Is there uneven parts? Is there inclines? Are there ditches? Are you going to need vertical spacing options? These are just observations. They aren't bad things. They are not bad things. There's things like swales and all kinds of ways to move the land in the way that you need it, right? So the next thing I want to talk about is this dreaded frost date zone conversation. Take it, leave it, or not. Okay? So the way you do this is the internet. If it's something that you want to consider learning about. So one place you can go is you go to Google and you type in Farmer's Almanac, or you type in what is my first and last frost date near me. It's going to look like this if you're on the Farmer's Almanac site. You're going to enter your information in the box. You would hit the button for the magnifying glass and it's going to tell you. So for example, my first frost is October 4th. My last frost is May 3rd. That gives me 153 days of frost-free growing time. Now there are crops that will grow in frost, and you learn it as you go. The other word we're talking about is zones. So there is a USDA plant hardiness zone map. This is the map for the United States. I am what's called 5A. I was always 4B before that. What this is good for is perennials. So zones don't matter for your annuals, okay? The zone is how cold does it get in the winter? How many chill hours do you have? Here's a map of Canada. It's not globally known to talk about zones because what do you do? How do you plan your garden? You know, a lot of packets are like, oh, plant it 4 weeks before your last frost. Plant it outside 2 weeks after your last frost. Well, not everywhere in the world has frost. Okay. So let's say you're in a Mediterranean region. How do they plan their growing season? They look at warmer spring temperatures and sufficient rainfall as a guide to plant crops. In tropical regions, they focus on rainy season and day length to determine planting times. In oceanic climates, they look at average soil temperatures. We always want to look at soil temperatures, not air temperature, for when we're actually planting. Air temperature, of course, is great data, but they don't have frost dates, right? They're looking at when does the rain come? When do we have our sun here? When is it so stinking hot that nothing's going to grow? We need to grow outside of that shoulder season, right? So take it or leave it. Do frost dates matter? It helps when planning, but it comes down to soil temperature. Just because it says, May 3rd, that doesn't mean I can go out there on May 3rd and start planting. I need to be watching the weather. We can get snow in May. If I have a garden planted because the calendar said May 3rd and we get snow 2 weeks after that, just wasted my time for certain things. It's going to die. So I have a hard time with frost dates and zones. It's okay to understand what it means. It's a good idea to look up your area and see what it says. But ultimately, you have to look at the weather patterns and the soil temps, right? Trying to figure out where I left off. It doesn't have like a thing that, oh, you left off reading right here. So let me just scroll through. This was the time we were talking about. We talked about direct sowing. Scott says to Miss Sharon, how many rabbits do you have and is your garden large? Storm says, thank you, Miss Sharon. I hope you're having a great evening. Serena says, how long before the last frost date should spinach and other cold weather crops be started from seed? The seed packet will tell you. It'll say 2 weeks or 4 weeks before your last frost that they can be sown outside and be okay. I could create a chart and put it on my website. Miss Sharon says to Scott, I have 2 lion lobs, 8 raised beds for now, 2 more coming. Miss Sharon is enjoying the chat. So Chef Tech is stuck between 6A and 6B. See, I also am like, well, 4B, 5A. Because if you ask me, we can still have 4B cold winters, that our wind chills can get to be negative 30 Fahrenheit. We're going to have a cold Arctic air right now. Our daily high for Monday is -5. And then factor in the wind chill, right? That matters when you're talking about perennials. Enjoy Being says, my garden is on a hill slope with a slight hollow. Before I started it, I noticed all the grass in that hollow was lusher and longer, indicating that the water tracked down through the shallow valley. Trying to put things into Celsius? Or is this your zone? You're calling it 6C? Yes, David the Good. Excellent teacher in gardening. He doesn't grow in my zone, but I still enjoy his information. He presents it well. I love his books. There are links in the description for his books, as well as the Living Soil Handbook by Jesse Frost. He also is on YouTube. He has the No-Till Growers channel and podcast. I love listening to him. I'm going to show a page in this book coming up. I have a couple other books we're going to talk about as it flows to that. Enjoy Being continues telling us the story here. It says, so garden is built in the curve, running in tiers across the contour. Helps for self-watering. I have a bathtub filled with cow manure at the top, and it can overflow and run down the hill. You've got a nice setup, it sounds like. Anne's Place says, yes, my crops failed from planting late last year, so it burned to death in the extreme heat. Right. Then you back it up. Okay, so that didn't work. Reevaluate. Food forest permaculture. Cool weather crops are planted during cool weather. Hot weather crops are planted during hot weather times. Scott says, my place is 7A. Anne's Place says, mine is 9B. Jack Beanstalk. Shawnee Grows. Hello, I just found your channel. This is a gardening channel. We stick to gardening only. We are discussing how to plan our garden tonight. So Scott is asking Anne, can you grow citrus? Miss Sharon says 8B here, but this weather does as it pleases. It may be 105 Fahrenheit or -5 Fahrenheit anytime. Yes, Storms, Radios, and Cats is 7A. So I think the fun part of planning is crops, right? This is like the exciting part. I encourage you to write a list of what you want to try, but think about purpose. Okay, so specific crop with a purpose. You always grow what you eat. So, for example, carrots for juicing and storing and fresh eating, cucumbers for pickles, slicing, juicing. That could be 3 varieties of cucumbers that you're planting. Tomatoes, slicers, cherry, or sauce. They all have different varieties that do different things well. What is your end goal with your food? Our goal is to eat the food, to preserve the food, to share the food. So to get seeds to grow our crops, you can get them locally from your neighbor, from a gardening group, from a seed library. We had examples of those. There was a website in that live stream, Growing Your Best Garden, where you could search to see if there was a seed library near you. Sometimes they're out, like in a mailbox type of thing. Sometimes they're in your library. They have a seed library. You can order from a distributor in your state. I've been trying to, I have a list. There was 2 that I wrote down just earlier that are Minnesota distributors, because I am on Facebook and I'm in a gardening group for Minnesota, and it really helps track down what is your seed starting schedule, what varieties do well in our climate, and where do you get your seeds from. So if you have that access and you can get in a group and chat with each other, it's going to give you tons of information about your actual place. You can start your seeds or buy started plants from a local nursery. Now, the bad side to that is there's less variety. That's kind of why I like starting my own seeds, because I can grow all kinds of things. Where at the nursery, there might be 5 types of tomatoes and that's it, right? Always direct sow in the ground if you can. Some places, something might be coming and eating things and digging it up, and not everything you can start and transplant. You have to direct sow carrots, for example. But sometimes you take that into consideration and only grow what you want to eat and get yourself a free catalog. You know, Johnny's, Baker's Creek, Southern Exposure might have one. I don't know if Urban Farmer or True Leaf have a catalog, but you can go on their website. Botanical Interests. I have links to all of those in the description. I have links to Canadian seed sources as well. It's in its own section of the description, so check those out if you're in Canada. And then we need to ask ourselves, are we going to save seed? Okay. So tips for choosing seed varieties is, do you need to ask yourself, like, are you wanting to save seed? Let's talk about how we figure this out. So if you want to save seeds, if you want organic seeds, that's how we start shopping. You're going to see words like hybrid, heirloom, open pollinated, and GMO. So if we talk about GMO, it says genetically modified organisms, mechanically or biological transfer of genetic material between genre, families, or kingdoms. Big farmers are who use GMO, who have contracts for these seeds. But now recently there was the purple tomato released last year to gardeners as an unnatural cross between a flower and a vegetable or fruit. And there's many concerns around this. Now, this can be an entire live stream in itself, so that's where I'm going to stop with GMO. Next, I'm going to talk about hybrid. It's a cross between 2 or more varieties within a crop, and it can happen naturally. So sometimes you'll see the word hybrid seed and F1 next to it. When there's F1 by the seed name, that means it's the first generation of the cross. Seed saved from those will not produce the parent plant because it's usually 2 mixed together. They are more resistant to drought or flood or disease. That's the purpose of hybrids. Now ask yourself, do hybrid seeds have less nutrition than heirloom? Watch the documentary on YouTube called The Loss of Nutrients if you want to deep dive into that more. There's a link in the description. And then heirloom, okay, or open pollinated. What that means is that has been around for many years. I mean, 50 or more years, that seed produces the same plant every time. So if you save seed from heirloom, it will produce the same plant. So again, do you want to seed save? Yes, then grow heirloom. If you're just growing to get a crop that is mildew resistant or has a description in it that can survive certain situations, hybrids to get your crop, but you cannot save seed from those and expect the same thing. So yeah, you can save them and grow them. A seed just wants to grow. Okay, the seed doesn't like, well, I'm a hybrid, I'm not going to germinate. You know, it's going to grow, but it's not going to give you what you planted originally the year before, is what I'm trying to get at here. Anne's place. Miss Sharon, that's what's happening here too since 2 or 3 years ago. Wacky weather. Okay, yeah, we talked about that. Uh, so, so what I've been doing, Chef Tech, in the last year is I was trying to do a natural yeast to make a good mead. So like a ginger bug. I couldn't get a pine one going. I don't have any birch. Oh, I might have access to birch. I was trying to build a natural yeast starter, and I haven't been super successful with that and having a great product at the end. So I need to go back and buy my yeast, and there's different types of yeast for different purposes, and I'm not going to say the name of mine right now. I'm in a mead group, and there's a brewing store near me, and there's all these possibilities, and so I want to get the one I need for what I want to do, and I want to get more honey because we use honey on a regular basis. So I would need to do a special shopping trip for that. But of course, I have the containers and I have the knowledge, and eventually I can make a video, I promise. But it ain't gonna happen anytime soon. I have a lot of other projects going on. It takes time. It just takes time. Anne's Place says, Scott, I just planted an orange little tree last year and it's carrying exactly 3 oranges now. Very young. Miss Sharon says, all I know is I never want interdeterminate tomatoes ever again. Interdeterminate tomatoes will grow and grow and grow forever and ever until the frost kills them. Where a determinate tomato is bushy, it grows to a certain height and then puts all its fruit on at once. And then you get all the fruit and then it dies. Mushroom Mark says, Anne's Place and Miss Sharon, you can send the snow back to Minnesota. I kind of miss it. I do too. So much. I really wish we had some snow. Storms, Radios, and Cat said, man, this garden talk has me wanting spring to hurry the heck up. It's snowing here, which makes spring seem so far away. I just want to grow outside. I'm okay with waiting for spring. I'm not ready. Miss Sharon is encouraging Mushroom Mark to come get it. She's going to help you load it up. Food Forest Permaculture says citrus like slightly acidic soil, a little fluffy and good drainage. Also, the first 2 or 3 inches of roots need to be exposed so it doesn't get fungus. Anne's Place says to Mushroom Mark, we have not seen a drop of snow for 4 years now, and so our dams and lakes are empty. Big worry here. We have concerns about our water table here, and I have concerns about the loss of nitrogen because we have not gotten enough snow at all. Miss Sharon says 61 days until spring. Chef Tech says I will be sowing about 30 pounds of my saved mixed tomato seeds on my new property in the spring. It will be epic, although it may backfire over the years. Time will tell. So I want to do a live stream that kind of hits this. It's something agriculture, adaptive, adaptive agriculture, about saving your own seed and breeding your own varieties that are used to your soil, your temperature, your microclimate, saving that seed year and year over and over again. We will get deep into that at some point in a live stream because I'd like to talk about that. Storms, Heroes, and Cats, y'all do our friend Shawnee a favor and pick that like button. It really helps your channel. Thanks. People are excited for spring. Survival Savvy, good to see you. Welcome to this. Talking about planting a garden, what we think about when we're trying to map it out. Food Forest Permaculture says, "Good night, Earthlings. Awesome live stream. Thank you for that. Catch the replay. We will see you all around. GT Junior Grows in Alaska is back." So now that we talked about our crops and our seeds, we need to create a planner, right? What do we do with the seeds? How do we have the right answers for what are we planting? How many, right? So what I like to do is write out, the plant name and think about, okay, how many plants do you want? Well, you should plant more than that number. There's a saying, one for the mouse, one for the crow, one that dies, and one that grows. Now, what that's saying is plant four and get one out of it, but that's not how it goes, right? There's things that happen that take crops out. So yes, if you want 2 tomato plants of a slicer, you should plant more than 2. I'm not going to give you a number. It's up to you. If you have other places you can stick plants in, or if you have someone you can give them away to, we don't want to waste the plant. I mean, it turns into compost. I shouldn't have said that. It turns into compost. It feeds the soil. It's not wasting a plant. Plants that die are good. Okay. Forget I said that. But sometimes we want like numbers. Like, I want to feed 5 people, for example, and I want to grow a specific crop, like let's say it's bush beans. What actually amount of seed do I need to put in the ground? And so there's sources online where it tells you the vegetable crop, how many plants per person. They give you well, this one, for here example, it says for 4 people, this is what you should plant. Do you direct sow it or transplant it? So for beans, for one person, 10 to 15 bean seeds in the ground and plant every 2 weeks. Let's say you want to feed 4 people beans, 40 to 45 seeds need to go in the ground, plant every 2 weeks. Beets, broccoli, cabbage, it goes through the whole alphabet. So if you're super not even sure, like, how many do I plant? You can look at these guides, but just know that you know what your family eats. My family of 5 is not going to eat 48 bean plants. You know what I'm saying? Because that one bean plant, you get more than one bean from, and you pick them and you leave it in the ground and it'll flower again and produce again. Like, that's not okay for my family. We don't eat green beans. Now, dried beans, yeah, I can save them, right? There's spacing guidelines that come on the seed packet. And so what that always is like single row cropping. But then like earlier I talked about square foot gardening, right? So that's where you don't listen to what's on the seed packet and you go by charts that show in a square foot how many of each plant go in there. So if you're looking for a square foot guide, you can check out my website. The link is in the description. There's PDF downloads in there. The website is a work in progress. Please bear with me. I'm not a web designer, but they are on there. We tested it and it goes to your email. And in the email, it'll say download, and that's where you download the PDF. It's not going to show up when you're in the website after you've completed the steps. And I'm trying to figure out how to problem solve that. And there also is a place to sign up to get information like a newsletter, or if we have something coming up or new products or t-shirts. Eventually we'll have t-shirts for sale. You can put your email and get on a list for me to be able to talk to you. So then I also like to keep track of what do I need to start inside and what goes outside. What is direct sown outside? What is the transplant time? You're laying out your space. Think about your companions, right? Companions have purpose. There's things called nitrogen fixers. So clover, beans, peas, fava beans, lupins, legumes, peanuts. What am I talking about when I'm saying nitrogen fixers? Well, it's a beautiful thing, I tell you. It's another one of those feeding the soil conversations. So here's an example of a fava bean plant that grew, and here is the roots. You see those round little balls on them? That is the nitrogen nodules. It's special bacteria called rhizobia colonized the roots of the legume, this fava bean root. It drew in nitrogen from the air and it stores it in the root system in the little sacs. It's crucial to leave the roots of the legumes in place. You're cutting the plant at the soil level to remove the top and chop and drop that, and you're leaving the root in place because all of those nitrogen little sacs are going to put nitrogen back into the soil, which is what produces your green, leafy, beautiful, praying leaves to the sun. That's what I mean by a nitrogen fixer when we're talking about companion planting, okay? There is companion plants that attract beneficial insects. So basil, sunflowers, cilantro, dill, parsley, yarrow, bee balm, chamomile, fennel are all examples of things that you plant to attract beneficial insects. So lacewings, lady beetles, parasitic wasps, honeybees, native bees, hoverflies. These are all good guys. Ground beetles, spiders, they help us. We want them in our garden. There are also plants, mostly flowers and herbs, that you can plant as a companion plant among your garden to prevent pests from finding your food that they want. That plant list is marigolds, calendula, nasturtium, mint, thyme, chives. Now these images are hard to see. This one's actually blurry, but if you go to the link in the description or you just clearly type in Google plants that prevent pests, plants that attract beneficial insects, you will get companion planting lists of things. So in my book, for the no-till book here, there's an example I want to show you if I can get it to come up on the camera. You know, sometimes when you hold things up, it doesn't go so hot. For companion planting. So what this is showing is the difference in the root structure and why they can grow together. So the shallow rooted plant is the lettuce, the deep rooted plant is the tomato, and the strong lateral growth root plant is the celery. So you can grow them by each other and you will get more food out of that space by following that guideline of what kind of root structure do they have, how much space do they need, okay? There's also conversations about cover crops, which I'm not getting into. This book does. It gets into cover crops very well. It's a whole nother conversation, okay? If you're looking for physical material for learning about companion planting, this book called Carrots Love Tomatoes is excellent. Link in the description. Another one I really like is called Plant Partners, Science-Based Companion Planting Strategies for the Vegetable Garden. These books have lists, they have charts, they have guides of what has worked. Try it too, you know, that kind of thing. They're great to have. The internet's also a great source. My big thing I want to talk about though with companion planting is I don't think you necessarily need a chart. Okay, you sort by size. For example, a cool crop space, you have your large size crops. Your large crops are your cabbage and then your peas with a vertical trellis can go in the center of the space. If we're talking about the bed space or the container, they go in the center of it. Then you have the next category of medium crops. So that would be celery, cilantro, kale, Swiss chard. You fill those in around, okay? Small crops, radish, lettuce, they go around, they go in the corners. You fit them here, you fit them there. They grow quick, they're in and out, they don't take up that much space. Last, around the border, the edge of that space, you do all your herbs and flowers. That's an example of companion planting, okay? Now there are a don't when we're talking about companion planting that I want to speak about. A don't is don't put nightshades really close together. We don't need them touching when you mix them up. So example of nightshades is eggplants, tobacco, okra, gooseberries, paprika, cayenne, goji berries, tomatoes, peppers, chilies, potatoes, sorrel, and pepino melon. Now, I do grow tomatoes and peppers in the same bed, but they're not touching each other. There's a space, and it's not something I do all over. It would be an example of like a salsa garden or a pizza garden. Um, but these are nightshades and they don't like growing near each other. They get the same diseases, they get the same pests. It's just advised not to do that, okay? We can also speak about the word crop rotation. So this is used with monocropping mostly. When I do companion planting, I have all these categories together in the same space. So I don't practice crop rotation per se. So what this is talking about is if you planted legumes in a space, examples of legumes, beans, peas, clover, alfalfa, chickpeas, lupin, peanuts, then the second year, following the flow here, they would say plant greens because they're going to eat up all that nitrogen the legumes left, like lettuce, spinach, cabbage, Brussels, bok choy, kale, broccoli, cauliflower, herbs, and collards. Then year 3, put a fruiting veg there. Your tomato, squash, melons, peppers, eggplant, cucumber, potatoes, corn. Then year 4, put a root veggie there, a carrot, a radish, an onion, a garlic, a leek, a parsnip, a turnip, a beet. So this is not a rule to stress about, okay? Like I said, this is mostly used with monocropping. And my actual experience in a year's worth of growing time, I kind of practice this, but as like I'll give you the examples and you can watch it on the chart here. So in the spring, you plant peas. In that same space, when they're done, plant cucumbers, and then you can plant peas in the fall. Okay, so I went from legume to a fruiting veg and then to a legume. Second example is when the garlic comes out and harvested in summer, you can put bush beans or cabbage for the fall. After lettuce, I can plant beets. After onions, I can put carrots, radish, or turnips in. So that kind of goes against itself, but that's what I have time for, okay? That's when something comes out. That's when I can get something that grows quick in again. And if you're stuck on ideas on what to grow, you can look at themes. So pizza, salsa, dye garden, stir-fry garden, tea garden, kimchi garden, herb garden, salad garden, cocktail garden, a garden for fragrances. This is an example of a salsa garden. The crop list here is tomatoes, peppers, onions, chives, cilantro, talks about the cages and the soil. We need to organize and lay it out, right? We're getting all these ideas. We're figuring out how many seeds we need. How do we know what to do next? Well, I like to sort my seeds by month when they get planted. I like to write it in a wall calendar. I like pen and paper. I like drawing a map literally on paper and writing it out. But there are web-based services. So in the description, I have links to all of these. This one is Grow Veg. This is a planner. This one is from the Farmer's Almanac, Garden Planner, helping you with when you need to start your seeds. It'll give you a seed calendar based on your frost zone, frost dates and zone. There's those words again. That's how they magically come up with the formula of when seeds go in and out. But again, test your soil temps before you actually do anything. And so it'll help you have a bed plan, like where things go. The most popular one lately is called Seed Time. They do have a free plan. This is an example of their calendar. You put the crop in lettuce, they're growing Jericho lettuce. They've entered where they are in the world. It lays out, okay, well, this is the month and day. You should probably start it. Do you want to start it inside or outside? When you go through their program, there's a mobile and a desktop version. Again, they have a calendar and then they have a layout. The layout is not free. You have to actually pay for that section. They have tasks like preparing the bed, seeding, cultivating, harvesting. There's a journal space, there's a classroom, there's a Facebook page. They are the most popular one that you're going to hear about for web-based gardening plans. This is called Grow Veg Garden Planner Charles Dowding's app, which is not free. This is a little example of what his would look like. And then Epic Gardening came out with their own as well. And so again, there are links to these as in the description. So think about what can be planted when a crop is harvested. Like, do you want a succession plant? Do you want to plant something every 2 weeks? Or are you a weekend warrior? Because some people, they literally plant their whole garden in one weekend and then they never put a seed in the ground again. They just cultivate, water, and harvest. That's it. Which one do you want to be? And then it's going to be go time. Prepare the soil when the soil temp is 55 degrees Fahrenheit for your cold crops. Otherwise, they could rot and not germinate. Wait till the soil is temping at 65 degrees for warm crops. If you don't have a soil thermometer, you can buy a specific one. I have a link in the description. What it is it's a meat thermometer with a gauge and a stick, and you stick it in the soil. You can Google soil temps near me, and there are places in your state that take soil temperature readings throughout the growing season, and they will post them. They will post where and what the temperature was, and it'll put it on a chart. Things you need to consider is, do you need to terminate your cover crop before you can plant? You need to rake and form the bed. You need to add infrastructure like arches, panels, T-posts. You got to get your garden journal and your planting dates and your seed names and your notes, and have a space for harvest weights, flavor. What did you like? What did you not like? Did the timing work? Did the timing need to be pushed back 2 weeks, pushed forward 2 weeks? Remember, don't plant too early, okay? Watch your soil temps and weather around that date, okay? The date thing. I'm going to talk about what I'm growing next. Where am I at here? Enjoy being. I plant tomato seedlings. They are about to be ripe at the moment, but end up with a dozen more volunteers from last year. Volunteers are welcome. Mad Chick Acres. My phone finally charged. I'm the other channel, Chef Tech, just doubling up. Appreciate the extra likes that you're bringing to the party. Storm says, good evening, GT Jr. I hope all is well with you, my friend. Mushroom Mark says, no, but they will eat 1,000 pea plants. 1,000 pea plants? I need a whole field of pea plants for my family. Magic Acre said, need to plant my snap peas this year. As they come in, I blanch and freeze them into the freeze dryer. Here is where you can join the community and help support the channel, ShawneeGrows.com. Please be kind. I am not a web designer. I am trying to figure this out. It has taken me weeks to set this up, and I encourage you with an open heart to just be gentle. Anne's Place says, wish I had a freeze dryer. Looks so great to use. Chef Tech says, it's a learning curve. Pricey, but worth it. Expect many mistakes. Anne's Place says, I didn't know. So except the bees, I kill all other buggers. Laugh out loud. Can you give me the link of this page, Shawnee? In the description, there are links to the articles I showed. So if you're asking about the beneficial insects, it's called deeprootsproject.org. Anne's Place. That's going to be the link in the description that you want. Scott says, I have 2 dehydrators, but no freeze dryer. They are like $2,500. Scott, Chef Tech says to Scott, I have both. They each have their own uses. Mark says to Scott, I want to try dehydrated. Scott says, my place is off grid and I rely on solar. I think dehydrators require a lot of power. Well, solar is a dehydrator, Scott. Build a solar oven and dehydrate in the solar oven. Mushroom Mark says, for jerky, though, I got it figured out on the smoker. Want to try other options, though. Jerky is great stuff. Jack Beanstalk. This is a lot of great info. I have watched many channels throughout the years. It can take weeks to learn from them. Glad I stopped in. Well, thank you. I love research. I love spreading knowledge. I love encouraging people to grow every day in every way. Sometimes you can't grow. I want to be able to teach you how to connect to local growers. We're going to try and get that in a live on the books of how do you find a CSA? How do you find a local farm? How do you not have to go to the grocery store for things? I would like to talk about that. Anne's Place, thank you for your kind words. Enjoy Being says, my old grandfather always had 2 gardens for annuals. One would be fallow, filled with lupin, then radish, and topped with manure during the year, while the other would be used, then cycled each year. Perfect. There is also a thing in certain books that talks about leaving your garden for rest on the 7th year. You do not grow in it the 7th year. Now, if there's volunteers growing, you let them grow and be and harvest and eat, but you do not actually garden in the 7th year. Does anybody practice that? Serena, What should soil temperatures be for old weather crops? Cold weather crops, 55. Oh, Richard, hey. Morning, sitting in the garden. Fantastic. I love encouraging gardeners to sit in their garden, in their space. It is not just a place of work, it is a place of rest and peace, to observe, to listen. Lots of information here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about my growing season, and at 10:30 we are going to close this live down, and I'm opening up a live stream talking about whatever you want. I mean, keep it appropriate, but people can come on panel if they want to hang out. It's going to be like a chill chat experience, as long as we can keep it wrangled and people participate. Like if I'm the only one on screen, I'll probably cut it short, but if the locals want to come in, I've sent them their links. So that's going to start here in 20 minutes. So like I said, what am I growing? I get my kids involved, and I actually want to give them their own space, and I have that ability this year. So when I say I plan it out pen and paper, I literally plan it out pen and paper. I mark north, east, south, west. I mark the beds. I'm doing 30-inch beds. I mark the path. I say in the bed for 4 feet, I want chamomile. That's over here. For 4 feet, I just want dill. I want my pickling cucumbers here with nasturtiums down the center. I want my slicer cucumbers here. I want nasturtiums down the center. Next bed. I want celery and basil and anise hyssop and carrots and sweet alyssum around and under my slicer tomatoes. Then in the next bed, I have my sauce tomatoes. I'm going to put marigold, celery, beets in that bed. Then I have my bed with cherry tomatoes. I'm also going to put calendula and lettuce and bee balm and anise hyssop and sweet alyssum all together. Then in my pepper bed, I'm going to put the sweet peppers on their own end mixed with cilantro and nasturtiums and carrots. Then I'm going to put beets and lettuce, then green beans, then more lettuce, bunching onions, fava beans, and then cow peas are going with my hot peppers. These are all companion planting, what I spoke about earlier. On the north end, I'm growing all the tall stuff. My coxcomb, amaranth, feverfew, sunflower, stalk, zinnias. This is my warm crop garden. Okay? This is my cool crop garden because I actually get to have different spaces for these things. Carrots get their own space. I'm doing 5 rows of carrots. Now, I don't plant the whole row in one day. You plant a row, wait 2 weeks, where's the thing? Plant a section, maybe 4 feet, wait 2 weeks, plant the next 4 feet, wait 2 weeks, plant the next 4 feet. You get what I'm saying? Or you pick varieties that come into readiness at different intervals, 50 days, 60 days, 70 days, 80 days. You plant them all at once, but they're not all ready to harvest at the same time. That is another trick to succession planting, is just growing a crop that comes to maturity at a different space. So in the peas, we have lettuce and celery growing and radish with the peas, because every inch matters to me in the garden. And we have our cabbages, our Swiss chard, our nasturtiums, our broccoli, our Asian greens, our kale, leeks in a bed, and then onions get their own bed, and I am going to do 4 rows, and those you plant all at once. But here's where I mean about getting my kids involved. I said to them, lay out a space, pick where the dirt's going to be, pick where the grass walkway's going to be, find north. What crops will you eat? So these are examples of what they did when I gave them that assignment. Some of their beds are shaped differently. I have 3 kids, by the way, so there's 3. And they are different ages, and you can tell the different skill level, I guess is what I'm saying, for them. So I do have specific like months of when things are started. I've got it all figured out. I've been doing this for a couple years here, but if I were to move, I would kind of need some help. That's where I would have to go to those seed calendars. So if you want to see what specific seed varieties that I'm going to use and where I bought the seed from, check out my live called Seed Haul 2025. I show them and we talk about them, and I talk about why I want to grow it and where it came from. So the fall garden has its own schedule, right? I can get cool season crops in again for the fall, but you plant them in the summer. So if it's 80 degrees outside, I need to keep them shaded if I'm starting them outside in seed starting trays, or just keep them inside, like my broccoli and cabbage. In July, I can direct sow more carrots, more green beans. In August, I can direct sow peas for fall, lettuce, greens, kohlrabi, beets, radish, turnips. In October is when I plant my hardneck garlic. That's what I'm going to be doing. Continue to learn, okay, guys and gals, folks, humans. Explore mulch options, homemade fertilizers. Like, we didn't talk about any of that. Chop and drop methods, pathway soil banks. Enjoy your harvest, eat it fresh. And then, yes, preserve the leftovers. If you want to grow enough food to get you through the winter, check out my live stream called Surviving the Hunger Gap. I gave crop lists, storage tips, sources for how to read the material. It's to give you ideas of what to grow and plan during your growing season to still be eating when the ground's frozen from your homegrown food. Enjoy your garden space. Sit with your garden. Sit with it. Put seeding in it. Okay? Breathe and listen to it. Watch it. If you have any questions, please leave a comment below. Let's see. Final thoughts here, and then we'll move to the other live. Because yes, there's an after party open chat live next. I put the link in the description, and it's on my channel. It's just the next live stream. Let me figure out where I left off here. The Country Humans Network. Minnesota is too cold. You must not be in Minnesota then. I'm so bummed that we don't have snow. Okay, what's up with that? Storm says it's so cool to see kids involved in growing. Yeah, I want to actually give them, like, mark off a space and go, this is yours, this is yours, this is yours, you're responsible. Country Humans Network, it is good to see you here for the end of our garden planning discussion. Anne's Place, I love learning, trying, and the joy of getting it right. That's a bonus, right? Oh my goodness. So yes, check out the description for all the links to the articles and some of the items that you could purchase that I spoke about here tonight. Join the community. Check out the website. Please be kind. It's a work in progress. I have printable, downloadable PDFs that I have built with my 2 hands in there. We will have t-shirts. I'm not going to knock it over. If you didn't catch what happened on yesterday's Cut Flower live stream, it's like after the 1 hour mark, some stuff happened. This is the shirt we're trying to develop. Shawnee Grows, Learn as You Grow, the big butterfly. Maybe one day I will discuss why it's a butterfly. It's a special meeting. Mushroom Mark says the kids definitely help with all the steps, digging, planting, planting, the whole 9 yards. What I love is the identifying. Like, we have kids, I'm not being mean right now. We have other kids that come around our gardens and they're like, what's that? That's how that grows? Is that where the food comes from? And I'm not being mean, but my kids will tell them, like, yeah, that's, see, this is how you know when it's ready. That's the thing you teach as they grow. When is it ready? You spent all this time. You spent 60 days keeping that thing alive, and then you're going to pick it too early or too late? No, we're going to pick it when it's prime. That's why I said start small. When you're planting your garden, don't grow all the things, guys. Unless you've been through this a couple seasons. You got to go small. We'll be on the after party. Okay, good. Enjoying your live. I'm going to share your channel with my daughter. Perfect. Yes, share with people. Good to see you're still here listening. Thanks. All right, everybody. Grow every day in every way. Learn as you grow. I'll see you at the after party. Continue to learn. Okay? Continue. Learn.